Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Eric and Matt here with Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, and we've got another podcast for you here this week, and wow. It's just like things have been crazy. There's been a lot going on, and the world is just seems like it's enveloped in chaos, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk in great detail about all of this chaos that's going on.
Absolutely. So today's podcast is called America Last. And I know that there's all these political talking points that get thrown around, and, people use these kind of clever sayings and all. And I think that what we're seeing right now is definitely an America Last policy, and we're going to go into a lot of various examples of how we feel that our needs are being put last over many. And this is a very strange administration. In the time that I've been around, I mean, I know I'm not exactly like in my 50s or 60s, and I haven't seen decade after decade of time come and go. But I'm nearly 40, and in my lifetime at this point, it's been kind of scary to see the sort of progression of politics into, and actually I would say more of a de-evolution of the political equation that I've seen in my lifetime, and it's never been scarier, and there's even sort of a kind of a situation now where even people on the far left maybe not are not even liking the way things are going. So this is kind of a weird time in our society, Matt, where it seems like, we've never been more divided, and we've never seen an administration that is so blatantly anti-America than what we've seen now. And I guess that's kind of what we're really talking about today, isn't it?
Indeed, and I would agree with you. And we're both relatively young, and we can't say like, oh, we've seen so many different presidents. We've seen a few, but what I can't wrap my head around is that I've never seen an administration actively try to hurt their own people. Like it's almost every single move and every single legislation or piece of law that's put into place is to hurt the American economy and to boost other countries' economy. It's almost like we're trying to help them more than help our own people, which brings us to this very podcast episode. And just to kick it off, and this is the most blatant, example recently that I can think of, is that gas prices in the U.S. are the highest they've ever been. Now, fortunately, in the state of Georgia, we do have the advantage of having the lowest gas prices in the nation, but that was because our governor suspended the gas tax when all of this first kicked off. So I have relatives that were visiting from Florida, from North Carolina, South Carolina, and they said that they couldn't believe how inexpensive our gas was. And to put it in perspective, it was still about $4.80 per gallon at that time. Now it actually has gone down. But during this whole thing, you were seeing prices of $10 a gallon diesel out on the West Coast. And at this time, for some reason, and I have absolutely no idea why, the Biden administration decided to sell off 5 million barrels of oil from America's strategic oil reserves meant to help the U.S. economy. It was meant to help lessen the burden of the American people, the hardworking American people that rely on this fuel and gas to get to work. They sell 5 million barrels of this to China.
The fuel situation is certainly very concerning because, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that we should not try to alleviate our dependence on fossil fuels, right, to some degree. Mm-hmm. But I think that just cutting everything off cold turkey is a very irresponsible thing. We should be pushing more nuclear options, which, I know that people have a very negative stigma of nuclear energy because of disasters like Chernobyl and Fukushima and other situations that have not gone quite right, okay, with nuclear, and that can leave a bad taste in people's mouths, For instance, the water aquifer that is directly under Chernobyl, if that radiation were to leak into the aquifer, it would contaminate the drinking water of millions upon millions of people who rely on that water for their livelihood, right? So I can understand people not wanting to jump full on with solar. However, a lot of the technology has gotten considerably better. Not only the engineering of the containment vessels and the cooling systems and the, emergency contingency plans and the backup to the backup to the backup.
Right.
I mean, one of the reasons that the nuclear reactor at Chernobyl failed was due to a very, very severe design flaw in the safety systems. I mean,
right.
And it was a known thing back then that the Soviets, or, the Russians basically did. They were cutting corners everywhere they could, right?
Yes, that was a known fact, especially in the nuclear department. Like their subs didn't have the proper shielding, all this stuff. And
so nuclear has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, but I think that for us to just say, well, the answer to all of these perceived climate issues, which some would even stop to say, well, that this, I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit here and say that climate change is a hoax, like all the way, straight into that particular equation. I mean, obviously, we are responsible for what happens to this planet. And sure, I can completely understand the desire to want to get away from fossil fuels. But the reality is that there is no way that we can just turn a switch off that magically just shuts us off from fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are what is driving our entire economy, our global economy. The entire geopolitical movement that exists between countries is due to fossil fuels. I mean, the trade that we have. I mean, we do not produce every single thing that we need here in this country, right? Like we rely on other countries. Other countries rely on us. That there's an entire geopolitical trade system that revolves around fossil fuels. So again, an example of America last would be, well, why shut down the Keystone Pipeline? Why not drill our own oil? We have enough oil reserves to run the United States for over 200 years. Just here. And that's not counting. I mean, you've got Biden going overseas and kissing the rings of the Saudis.
That was.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, that was real bad.
I mean, you want to talk about America last? I mean, our view, like the way that people look at us on a global stage. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a figure like a president is going to be directly, the ambassador. Like people are going to look at that president and say, hey, this is the person that represents your country. This is the best that you had to send. Like this is your representative. And it's embarrassing. And why would someone like that be put into that position to make us look so weak? I mean, that's America last, right? So I'm going to keep saying America last throughout this podcast because I'm trying to give examples of where I think we're being put last. And for one, you're going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline, which not only employed, untold amounts of people who lost their jobs when it shut down, but now look at the oil prices.
Yes.
And they want to blame Putin. And sure, to say that Putin isn't, a tiny microcosm of a blip of a factor in what the prices of oil is going to be, around the world or whatever. But to say that you can just turn a switch off and just, completely alleviate our need for fossil fuels, that's not only a fallacy, but an ignorant fallacy at best. I mean, because even Elon Musk said that it's irresponsible to completely get away from fossil fuels. I mean, what do you think charges those Teslas? And these people are so full of themselves to say, oh, well, you just plug it in the wall and it charges. What do you think provides that electricity? Yeah. Now, the answer is nuclear, right? There are new options for batteries now. They have new types of batteries, okay, that last a really long time. I'm going to look them up, and we're going to talk about these new batteries that they have that actually use like fissile, like nuclear fuel as a source. Like they're literally like little nuclear batteries that use I guess some form of nuclear waste. We'll read up on that in a minute. But there's new battery technology that's awesome. Okay. There's also advancements in nuclear that I would love to talk about, and it's within the context of America Last, because I feel like we need to be leading the charge on nuclear.
We really
we can
should.
have a truly utopian society if we have nuclear power that will truly give us all sustainable energy with a minimal amount of waste and not having to rely on other countries for oil. If they're not going to drill the oil here, we need to at least have nuclear power through and throughout. Look at what's going on in Ukraine, Matt.
Yeah.
Their nuclear substations are still active. They've got power, even in an active war zone, even while they're being shelled. So that is pretty telling, right? To, instead of relying on, in fact, there's a dam in the Ukraine that is captured by the Russians now, and there's actually some concern that they might blow that dam up. Okay, if the Ukrainians push them back and then they have to push back, there's worry that the Russians are going to destroy that dam, and they rely on that hydroelectric. So see, there are alternative energy, but it's also about understanding the pros and cons of all that. But anyway, I didn't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but that's one area that we're put last when we should be leading the charge of sustainable energy. And nuclear is that sustainable energy.
I agree. I'm a huge proponent of nuclear. I think that it's a great technology, and there's a lot of misconceptions based on, the safety aspect of it. It's one of the most safest forms of energy that you're going to have. And it lasts a very long time. It's not renewable per se, but when you have half-lives of that long, you don't really need it to be renewable. It's producing this energy. The disposal aspect, they've made huge technological advances in how they dispose of this nuclear waste. And the most prominent way they dispose of it now is they encapsulate it into concrete, not barrels, but concrete coffins, as you say. They drill down 300 or 400 feet using the same drilling methods they drill for oil. They're drilling these huge 400-foot holes, and they're just literally dropping these coffins into the hole. And they've done science research. It's perfectly safe. It might last for 1 million years, but it's locked into this cavern underground. And I just wanted to touch on fossil fuels. I like having a car that runs on fossil fuel. I like electric. I like the technology. But along with that comes oversight, comes control. I like being able to go to my car and having the ability to turn it on when I want to turn it on. Not saying when you go to electric, you get into a Tesla, everything looks beautiful, but at the end of the day, who has control over whether that car actually turns on or not? Not you. Look what happened with the hurricanes in Florida. All the Tesla owners in Florida, Tesla said, oh, you know what? We're feeling generous. We're going to upgrade all of your firmware to give you the extended driver's package during this hurricane so you can actually get out of Florida. And that just took a push of a button. And now your vehicle has extended range. But how does that work on the opposite? If they said, you know what? We don't want you to be able to go anywhere. And they can reduce that range to 0 and your car's not going to move. But you don't have the ability to make that decision because it's electric.
Good point, man.
Versus me, I can just turn the key on. Those cylinders are going to start firing, and I'm off to the races. And I mean, just all kind. And the Khashoggi thing. When you mentioned Saudi Arabia, that it blows my mind to think that a sitting president will go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who has been openly charged with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist that they lured into the Saudi Arabian embassy, hacked him up into pieces, carried him out in multiple suitcases. And this is the kingdom when they asked Joe Biden, how can you do business with a country that openly assassinates their journalists? And it wasn't like it was like, oh, we made it look like an accident. No, they hacked him up into pieces and carried him out in suitcases. He said, in a nutshell, sometimes you just have to do business for the better of the gist of the response was, sometimes you have to do business with people for the betterment of mankind. And it just blew me away that this is the weakest president that I've ever seen.
Yeah, America last for sure.
Yeah.
Again, America
Holy
last.
cow.
Okay, so this comes from energylivenews.com. This is just sort of a quick synopsis of those batteries I was talking about. U.S. startup unveils battery made from nuclear waste that can last up to 28,000 years. The nano diamond battery's power comes from radioactive isotopes used in nuclear reactors. So see, for the first time in a very long time in human history, we're seeing a situation where this nuclear waste can now be used for other productive things. And once those batteries are depleted, then obviously, I guess this is where we're processing that down this waste in a way that can be used for a battery. So there are so many interesting and new technologies that they're able to scale up. And I'm so fascinated in alternative energies. And I mean, I know that there's a lot of different things out there that can be done with energy, but it's just so cool to see something like that. And this is a recent development, are these, diamond batteries that use nuclear, waste as a byproduct, which that is such a clever way to get rid of that nuclear waste and, have a battery in the process. And there are different types of nuclear technologies for nuclear energy that have been developed as well. Now, we're probably not going to go into those in the context of this podcast because we have many other examples to share of how we're being put last on the world stage. But energy, the energy sector, and our dependence of foreign energy and our refusal to even use our own energy that exists right under the ground of our feet right now is pretty telling about the way that these people are really out of touch. I mean, if we want to make ourselves as powerful as we can be and we want to make our country strong and independent, then relying on other people for energy and also selling our strategic reserve to China, who is a known geopolitical enemy of ours, that, it's just, this all doesn't add up. This is not painting a picture of a group of people who cares about you and me who occupy this continent and care more about their place in the global echelon of the global power struggle,
world elite.
the global cabal,
elite.
if you will, the global elites. Like, they're more concerned about being, in a good position on the global scale and not necessarily caring about what Americans want. It's like we're just stepping stones to their political power that they can then wield to enhance their own lives and enhance their own families and to build, this cabal, if you will, this cult of power. And like the song says, cult of personality. Like, they're building this cult around their power handling and the way that they can, basically just manipulate the entire world geopolitically. And that's what's scary. I mean, we've heard the talks of one world government forever. And it's like the sabers of that one world government are rattling and people are waking up to it. And that's why social media has been so adamant about trying to silence the opposition and to silence voices that they don't agree with, because they know that people waking up and communicating and having discourse and talking with each other and actually sharing information is that's how we defeat them, is by being armed with knowledge. Knowledge is power. And by having that power and that open communication, we're able to call them out on all their bullcrap at every turn. And that's why you see, like in the Netherlands, the farmers are standing up to all the environmentalists who obviously are clearly out of touch with what it takes to run the modern world. For instance, I know we're going to get past power, but I want to mention too, there are very, very few electric vehicles that exist today that are going to generate the power and torque that a diesel engine can generate. So I know, people would say, well, let's just have solar powered tractors or whatever. There's no way you're going to meet the torque specifications, the amount of power needed on tap to run your PTO and to run those huge machines using electric engines. You're just not going to. Diesel is still king in terms of producing power to the wheels, is what you need when you're out there in those fields and you're planting corn, you're harvesting, you're spraying fertilizer, pesticides, whatever you need to do, right? A whole bunch of the world's urea comes from Russia,
That's
right? Look at, Ukraine is one of the major grain bread baskets of our world, right? So geopolitically, we start to see these things have an effect, and people can start to see the effects that these things are happening. I mean, that would really allow us a great way to segue into our security and our defense as being sold up the river, right? We're sending all this money Matt, to the Ukraine, and all this inflation that we're seeing. I mean, that's an America last policy. That's an America last idea where you're going to say, well, let's just print all this money without any consequence as to what would happen when we print it.
Right. And before we do that, I wanted to touch on one thing before we segue when you mentioned the global elite and what they can get away with. And the most recent example of that is with Nancy Pelosi's husband. He owns an investment firm out of California. And they've been accused of insider trading all the time. But this one is very obvious, very clear and obvious. He purchased some NVIDIA stock, and NVIDIA makes video cards, GPUs. GPUs are in very short supply because of cryptocurrency mining. So there was a big, everybody was mining Ethereum because it hadn't staked yet. And just meaning it hasn't, in that vernacular and that terminology means that when you get to a certain point, you no longer mine it. It's been staked. You've mined all you can mine, and now there's an actual value, hard value placed on it. So with all of the crypto mines going on, there was a huge shortage of NVIDIA GPUs, and these are high-end GPUs. These are $1,000, $1,500 GPUs. So there was a semiconductor vote that was being put in through legislation to increase semiconductor manufacturing. Well, lo and behold, Nancy Pelosi's husband happened to find out this information before it went to vote, and now he purchased anywhere between $1 and $5 million in this stock. Magically, he was able to tell what the good bets were.
That's right.
And there's no news outlets reporting on this. Not on mainstream media.
Real quickly, here's an article from The Hill that kind of just gives a brief synopsis. In March of 2021, Paul Pelosi exercised options to purchase 25,000 Microsoft shares worth more than $5 million. Less than 2 weeks later, the Army disclosed a $21.9 billion deal to buy augmented reality headsets from Microsoft.
Yep.
So there you go. Insider trading.
Not.
Shares of the company rose sharply after the deal was announced. For his latest purchase in June, Paul Pelosi bought up to $5 million in stock options equal to 20,000 shares in NVIDIA, a leading semiconductor company. The purchase, first reported by the Daily Caller, comes as Congress is set to vote on legislation later this month that would result in a $52 billion in subsidies allocated to elevate the chip production industry as it faces increased competition from China.
Who would have thunk?
So basically, it's insider trading.
Absolutely.
That they know that vote is coming up, and they know likely how it's going to go. They know those contracts are in the works, and they use their giant grift status and their special privileged status of knowing what's going on before it happens.
They don't even try to hide it,
and they don't even try to hide it.
They know they're tracking him. They look at his trades. Look at who he's connected with. He doesn't even try to hide it. That's how brazen he is. He's like, you know what? Oh, well. And they just boom, buys it. At least back in like the early 2000s, these guys were at least trying to hide it. They're
using shell companies or something.
Shell corporations, offshore, overseas. Like they're going through the motions. At least now they don't even try. And Nancy Pelosi was taking an interview on TV, and one of the reporters asked her about this specific trade, and she literally just takes the microphone, she pushes the microphone down and just walks away. So not only are they not reporting on it, they're refusing to answer questions to the people in which they represent why this is taking place, and they're getting away with it because they're the global elite. Versus you have, so-and-so get accused of insider trading on, he told his uncle about something and this guy winds up in prison. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, we've sent well over $54 billion in aid to Ukraine.
For sure.
Now, just for those of you who may not quite see what is going on here, there's a couple of things that are happening, right? One is it's what's called a proxy war. And for those of you that may not understand geopolitically what's happening there, and listen, I'm never going to claim to be some expert or legal authority or lawyer or something like that. I'm just a dude with a YouTube channel with an opinion. All right. So just please understand, this is my opinion and this is just the way I see it. If you agree with me, wonderful. If you don't, please let me know why and tell me why I'm wrong. But look, from the outside looking in and just the uncouth sort of basic everyday man view of this, right? All these billions of dollars are getting sent to Ukraine because what a proxy war is basically where you're not directly fighting the war, but you're funding the people you want to win the war. And knowing that they're fighting the war, they're fighting your enemy, so you fund your enemy, you fund your ally to fight your enemy without you being involved, right? And there's been, look, proxy wars are as old as time, right? Countries have been funding their enemies' friends, or their friends that are fighting their enemies for years. I mean, it's an old tactic that's been around forever, right? But, you know, you're not talking chump change here. This isn't exactly money we're just finding in the freaking couch cushions, okay? I mean, this is $54+ billion in aid, I mean, with a B, right? And when you start just brazenly, you know, printing that money and sending it over there, I think that it's a little more than just what meets the eye, all right? On the surface, you would say, well, this inflation is just because we're printing all this money to send to Ukraine, and people should just deal with $6 a gallon gas, or in some cases, if you're in California, $10 a gallon for fuel. You should just deal with the higher gas prices, knowing that there's a war going on, and we should try to support the Ukraine, and everyone's going to have to feel the pinch. That's the talking point they use. But where is that money really going? I mean, obviously, yes, there's defense articles, there's weapons, there's bombs, there's training, there's all this food and all this aid that they're likely purchasing with the money or that's being used. But there's also, I guarantee you, a lot of laundering going on too. That money's been laundered 10 times, right? So how do you know that these people in Congress who are just brazenly voting on these spending packages, how do you know they don't have vested interests in the defense contractors that are on all sides of this situation, that they're not making money off of this money that's being spent, right? So it's a way to launder that money. Right? It's money laundering, if you think about it, because that money then gets spent on something. And then, of course, because members of Congress likely own stocks in the defense contractors that are producing, you know, war implements and bombs and things that are getting sent over there, right? And then their stocks go up and they make more money, but they're completely willing to enslave you with a $54 billion bill just to enhance their own stock portfolio. And that's what's happening. Like, it's a form of money laundering. Right, they're laundering money
with impunity.
With impunity, mm-hmm. They're laundering money under the guise of, well, we're helping fight this proxy war or whatever.
Yep.
Now, on the geopolitical stake, Matt, I would argue that it's probably important to not let the Russians take over Ukraine. Like, I believe that, and when you look at this, just remove yourself from the situation. Forget about the spending. Forget about all of the crap that they're blatantly doing right under your nose. Forget about that for a moment and just look at it like, hey, there's these people who live in this country. They're just like you and I. They're average people minding their own business, right? At least we want to think that, right? And then someone just rolls in and tries to take you over and starts killing you. What do? What would you do? You'd defend yourself, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Would you want someone to help you in your time of need? Yes, you would. No one is going to sit here and say that some country should just invade another country and that we should just sit back and let that happen, especially when there's this animosity between the Russians, the Chinese, their allies, and the West, you know, UN and all of this thing. It's like there's this coalition of powers that obviously are using the Ukraine as this no man's land. I mean, that's really what geopolitically, that's what's happening.
It is. And you know, I'm kind of torn on this because you can't associate the suffering of the people of the country with the government of the country. So the people of the Ukraine don't deserve to go through what they're going through.
The Russian troops don't either. I mean,
yes,
those kids are being sent over there to fight, and they don't want nothing to do with it. They're dying. 30,000 Russian troops have died. Do you think they deserve to die?
Absolutely not. And when you have a government giving aid, $53 billion to a government that was in the top 10 corrupt governments in the world, funding the Biden administration, when I say funding the administration, meaning they were funding the son, I forgot his name, I'm having a brain fart, but Biden's son's Hunter was sitting on the board of one of the energy companies in Ukraine, getting a fat paycheck for nothing. You know, for Americans,
money laundering.
Yeah, to think that Americans should help out and give them more money. All you're doing is we're giving the government money and they're giving it back to the current administration in the form of personal assets. So you're taking public assets, which is tax money, and giving it to the government to provide it as personal assets as a job. And it blows me away. It is unfortunate that, you know, this is taking place, and I feel for the people of Ukraine. And is there some crocodile tears there from the government? Yes, I believe so.
So real quickly, this is on NBC News. Analysis of Hunter Biden's hard drive shows his firm took in about $11 million from 2013 to 2018 and spent it fast. The hard drive and documents from Senate Republicans indicate few of Biden's deals ever came to fruition and shed light on how fast he was spending his money. So real quick here. From 2013 through 2018, Hunter Biden and his company brought in about $11 million via his roles as an attorney and a board member with a Ukrainian firm accused of bribery and his work with a Chinese businessman now accused of fraud, according to an NBC News analysis of a copy of Biden's hard drive and iCloud account and documents released by Republicans on 2 Senate committees. Now, I'm not going to go into like a metric ton of detail, but that does seem awfully suspicious, does it not?
Yes. I mean, $11 million is life-changing for 99% of America, and they're just handing it out because of a last name. What I will tell you is that, you know, while everybody is looking at America and how America is helping the Ukrainian people, why is nobody looking at Germany and the UK and Europe helping the Ukrainian people? Because all I see is them double dipping. So yes, they are giving the Ukraine weapons, but they're also spending $1 billion on day on purchasing Russian energy, whether it's coal or oil. So Germany itself is still buying Russian coal until August 1st and Russian oil until December 31st. So that's the time frame that they gave themselves as a country to stop purchasing Russian energy. So on one hand, you're giving the Ukrainians weapons. On the other hand, you're giving the Russians money for energy. Now, the Russians are not stupid. They know what's going on. So what do they do in the last few days? They said, we're going to reduce the oil output on the what was it, North Star 1 pipeline. We're going to reduce that output to 20%. So you were getting 100% for your entire country. Now we're going to get you 20% because we know you're going to stop buying in December 31st. But you know what? You're going to have to keep buying it because now you're only getting 20%. So what's going to happen? They're going to introduce legislation to extend that sanction. They're going to have to keep buying Russian oil at $1 billion a day. This war is going to keep going. So as much as I'd like to, and on top of that, you have America giving out our strategic oil reserves again. They're going to probably hit up America. Hey, we need some oil. Sure, buddy. Here, take some of our oil that our people don't need when we do need it and give it to your people. It's like the most asinine, backwards thinking I've ever seen.
When you look at the geopolitical disaster that is happening there right now, that starts to affect the entire bosom of Europe. Right now, you got the Germans, talking about, oh my gosh, how are we going to, cut power consumption? I mean, like in California, for instance, there's already rolling blackouts. I mean, look at the situation going on in the Southwest with Lake Mead drying up.
Oh yeah,
now. I mean, there's a huge potential humanitarian issue that could develop from Lake Mead drying up completely, yep. And now your dam is not producing any power. Yep. And you don't have water, you don't have power. It's a double whammy. Yeah,
so the water dropped below the actual line that the dam can take water in. So at some point there is no power being generated.
That's right. So here's another example, right, of how America gets put last, right? And now since we're sort of talking about defense, right, we're talking about spending this money with Ukraine, and we're talking about all of the geopolitical windfalls and consequences of all these actions, how they all have a cause and effect around the entire globe. Let's double back to America. All right. All right, America last, yet again.
Yes.
Right? Legislation introduced in the House, 1808, H.R. 1808, assault weapons ban. So at a time when Americans want to feel more secure, right, and Americans from many different backgrounds, many different political affiliations, many different races, religions, everyone is agreeing, hey, we're going to arm ourselves, we're going to get training, we're going to protect ourselves at an unprecedented time in the history of our country where more people are choosing to arm themselves than any other time in the history of the United States. You're going to introduce an assault weapons ban, right? So how could you come up with a more America last concept than that? You've got the entire world rattling sabers, literally barking at the doorstep, waiting for a chance to pick a fight. You've got China rattling sabers, right? You got Russia rattling sabers. Russia's literally attacking their neighbor with sights on potentially other people.
Yeah. Belarus
right.
is joining in.
Yeah,
Poland
Norway has been on high alert because all of Russia's submarine bases are up there along that northern coast, and of course, in a war, Russia would want to take the entire northern part of Norway in order to extend the range of their nuclear submarine capabilities and to build more submarine bases. So there's a geopolitical disaster. Poland's on high alert, right? Belarus is on high. I mean, everyone's on high alert.
Well, Belarus is rattling sabers to be on with Russia.
Right,
those guys
but
are
everyone's on call.
Yeah.
Everyone is sort of looking at this situation, right? Russia has expended, how many precision-guided bombs have they extended? How many troops have they lost? And this is just what could potentially be scratching the surface of a much greater potential conflict. And at a time when we have this strife going on in our country, right? Look at all the looting and the rioting and some of the internal strife that we've had. And so many people are correctly choosing to arm themselves. And despite all that, Congress is going to introduce a bill to ban the most commonly owned firearms in the United States.
Yes.
That's America last in a nutshell.
But
you should want a strong national security. You should want your citizens to be able to go toe-to-toe in the streets with the enemy. What if we're attacked, right? The populace, the armed populace in this country are like one of our lines of defenses. Why would you, all right, if you were putting America first, why would you want to potentially create a disastrous situation for people who need to be able to stand toe-to-toe with an oppressor?
That's right.
Unless you're in the business of oppressing.
Well, it's interesting because I was watching that Thomas Massey, video about how he was going over like which weapons were banned, which weapons weren't, and he said, "Oh, the Garand isn't banned. It's an actual weapon of war." And I was thinking, these guys want to ban ARs, but apparently they've never been vibe checked by a AP round before. Because that's like 5.56 is good, but man, that 30-06 black tip is a different animal. But you're absolutely right, Eric. So when you think about it, all right, we have 10.1% inflation. Yep. We have food shortages. We have formula.
That's what they're saying, the inflation.
Yeah. We have formula shortages. I have friends on Facebook that have newborn babies, and I know it's not all over the news right now, but I still see like all these moms, they're like, oh, hey, this store has, Enfamil. This store has this. They had 3 left on the shelf. And I'm thinking like, this is still going on. They're just not reporting it. So there are still shortages across the board for pretty much everything. Inflation is 10.1%. I feel it, man. Everything costs more. But you know what is interesting is I have some really good friends. They just got back from a week and a half to 2 weeks in Europe. So they went to the UK, they went to France, they went all around the entire European circuit. And when they came back, they were like, you know what? It was actually cheaper in Europe than it was here. So they could go and eat, they could, get groceries, whatever they needed to do. And then they get back to the US, their home, where they live, and all of a sudden they're taken aback. Even though it's only for 2 weeks, they're like, wow, everything is a lot more expensive here because our government doesn't care about us. They care about everybody else, every other country in the world except us. It's almost like when you have people that only care about how they are portrayed to others. They want the other countries to like us versus they want every other country to respect us. There's a difference, and I honestly believe that. Before the current administration, every country had respect for America. They understood who we were, the powerhouse that we were. We were to be respected. Now we're like wanting everybody to be our friend. They're like, oh, hey, let's be buddies and friends, and I'll give, like, buying your friends. Oh, yeah, I'll pay for this, and I'll pay for that, and I'll give you money for this. And then everybody else is just left by the wayside.
So what do we get to own the land in Ukraine? What are we buying? What's our $54 billion buying us? Do we get the land?
Nothing. Matter of fact,
oil rights.
If we go over there, they'll kick us out. They'll kick us. If we go to Ukraine right now, they would turn us around and kick us out, even though that we gave them $54 billion. They would, oh, do you have a visa? Do I need a visa? We gave you $54 billion. Yes, you need a visa. Yes, you need a passport. I mean, we don't get the equal reaction for the people that we're helping.
The Ukrainian gross domestic product. All right, the entire gross domestic product for the Ukraine in 2020 was $155.6 billion. So we gave them a third of their annual gross domestic product. What do we get? What do we get for that? I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't receive help if they need it, but what do we get in return? Like, remember the Louisiana Purchase? Like, we purchased land. I mean, like, there are geopolitical consequences and causes and effect to every single thing that we do, right? I mean, if you give someone land or you give someone money, what is that, a loan? Are they going to pay it back? I mean, what's the consequence? Is it just clear and free money? What do we get in return? Do we get oil rights? Do we get the land? Do we get, what do we get?
Nothing.
What? A high gas bill? Inflation? No baby formula? Assault weapons bans? Potentially a Chinese style social credit system?
Yeah.
Which they're already kind of softcore implementing. As we speak, look at all of the cancel culture. Look at all the blacklisting. Right? That's straight out of the playbook of the CCP. So it kind of gets to a point where how can you not say that your government is being ran by communists? Because that's how they're acting.
Exactly. And you're starting to see this play out with all of the legislation they're putting in place. Everything is leading to control. It's so interesting how it all happened within the last 2 years. Everything that is starting to be put in place is, well, let's try to get as much control from the people as possible. And then if it doesn't work out, Eric, they kind of backpedal and they're like, oh, no, let's not, like the Ministry of Truth. When they tried to implement the Ministry of Truth, that is honestly the first time that I've seen them turn tail and run so fast. And that's because the person that they picked to head the Ministry of Truth, she put some questionable videos online singing about communism and fascism and stuff like that, which was very clear and obvious and blatant that this was the type of person that she is. And you probably shouldn't have someone like that over a department that its job is to curate and censor the internet.
Well, you notice that the internet came in pretty quick and
yes,
totally owned her on everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. So here's a quick article from Business Insider. China's social credit system ranks citizens and punishes them with throttled internet speeds and flight bans if the Communist Party deems them untrustworthy. That's just scratching the surface. It's actually much worse than that. Now, we're not going to get, completely, into this craziness, but it says, China's been rolling out a system that ranks its citizens based on their social credit. People can be punished if they drive badly, buy too many video games, or steal. It's not a unified nationwide system, but China plans on eventually making it mandatory for everyone. Well, of course they are, because you have no way to fight back even if you wanted to. Now,
that's right.
We're not going to get into a ton of detail, but this social credit system can actually keep you from partaking of certain goods and services. They can literally make it to where you can't pay rent, you can't buy food, you can't buy fuel, you can't
buy
travel,
a house in a certain area.
Can't leave, you can't do anything. Like, it literally will excommunicate you from society, and that's communist China. And these are the types of plots that they're looking at closely as a model for a way that they can deal with things here in the U.S. And when you look at the Chinese social credit score and compare it to like maybe the way the CUF was handled here, right?
Yeah.
I think the CUF was more of a situation where maybe they just want to see how far they could go and what people would put up with. So that was a test, right, to see if people would comply or not. So, basically to them, all they see is, well, it doesn't matter what the end situation was, right? It doesn't matter what way we try to control somebody, simply that we could either achieve or not achieve the compliance. And really, it was a giant social experiment to kind of see who will fall in line and who won't. And I think that was pretty telling for them. That's why you see them going after gun rights so hard with 1808. They know that the Second Amendment is standing completely in the way of tyranny and any type of control they want to mandate or otherwise force on the citizenry.
I couldn't agree more. And that's exactly what happened. You had those that complied with the government at that time, and they actually turned into the Gestapo, turning in their fellow neighbors and turning in their family and their friends, and they got exactly what they wanted. They got the litmus test that, hey, we know what group of people will fall in line, we'll see what group of people won't, and then we can slowly start stripping away what gives those people power. And the Second Amendment is what gives us the power to...
They know that.
Oh, yeah,
they absolutely know that. There's a reason they can't come weld up all the doors on the apartment complexes and force people to stay in their homes.
Yeah, man.
Because they would, probably that would not be good for their health, right?
You boys ever heard of belt fed?
And look, I know that a lot of people accuse folks like me of going, well, all you care about your guns, all you care about is firearms. It's not that. It's just that I understand what's at stake. I understand the greater, geopolitical struggle that's in place, the greater vision of what is going on. Like, I try my best to kind of look at geopolitics in a way that makes me understand why these people are doing the crazy things that they are, in order to, as some form of justification for the geopolitical goals that they're trying. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, America is America, right? And a candidate who runs for office in America should care about America. They should put America first. They should put our needs above the needs of anyone else, right? I mean, why are we sending barrels of oil all around the world? And why are we buying oil at inflated prices from all around the world when we have the ability to be self-sufficient here? Why are we harming our own citizenry and passing down what is essentially a hidden tax? Because inflation is a hidden tax. All right, at the end of the day, it is a hidden tax that is just ingrained into the price of everything you buy. And an example of the stagflation or whatever would be, all right, for instance, at my local grocery store, all right, I buy the round beef logs, okay, that come in like little sealed log, little beef logs. And 3 months ago, you could buy a 5-pound beef log for $14. Now, the beef logs are still $14, but now they are 3 pounds. Mm-hmm. So you're paying the same amount of money for less product, and they're just hoping you won't notice. When I asked the meat man there at the grocery store, I'm like, come on, man, you think we're idiots? Like, we know that we're getting less for the same money. He's like, well, don't hate me. I'm just the guy that stocks the shelf. I mean, I get it. Like, it ain't the fault of the guy who's trying to make a living and stocking the shelves. It's not his fault that that's the way the meat is being sold now. He's like, well, that's all they're sending us now. They don't send the 5-pounders anymore. They only send the 3-pounders, and they cost the same. Well, so you literally lost, a third, nearly a third of the value of your money. It takes the same amount of money to buy 3 pounds of beef as what it took to buy 5 pounds of beef 2 or 3 months ago. Well, that's how crazy this is getting.
That's the mentality of all the upper echelon elites. And a great example is, what's going on with Washington, D.C. and they're bussing in. I know Arizona and Texas have been bussing in all of these illegal immigrants that have been crossing the border. And the D.C. mayor came out, and you might have seen it on the news. There's the quote, racist mayor, because all of these illegal immigrants are being bussed into Washington, D.C. downtown, and they're filling up all the homeless shelters. They're taking up all of the resources of Washington, D.C. So guess what? Now it's a Washington, D.C. problem. You get to see what everybody else in America is experiencing. Because before, behind, when you were in your little District 13, where everything is good and you don't have any issues, you can make all the laws and make all the rules for thee, and it doesn't apply to you. But now it's real. Now you have thousands of undocumented immigrants running through Washington, D.C., filling up your homeless shelters, using all of your public resources, draining the taxes of your local economy, and now you're upset versus the local economies of Arizona and Texas. Good for them because it's putting it in perspective. Now you get to see what everybody else is experiencing.
Yeah, it's easy to go, well, I don't care about the people crossing the border because it's not in my backyard. And people have this disconnection of, well, it's not my problem because I don't have to see it in my backyard. So therefore, I don't care. It's like the same people that say, well, I don't care if this particular state passes, some state level gun control because it's not my state. Why should I care? But look, here's the thing. All of the nastiness trickles downhill eventually. You can't avoid getting it on you. It's all going to trickle downhill. It's all going to have a cause and effect that will affect your life at some point and in some way, in some direct way that you will not be able to escape. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to come here legally and come here, in the proper process. I mean, we are a home for liberty-loving people, and we have pretty lax immigration overall in terms of, if you just come here the correct way, I mean, sure, I wish the waiting times weren't as bad. I wish the process was more streamlined to get here legally. I wish that the system was better, right? We have a terrible system for getting people here, but there is a process, and you can do it legally, and you can become a naturalized citizen of this country. But just walking over the border, I mean, they're letting this stuff happen. I mean, if you haven't seen it, we did an entire episode on the border. All right. I went down there with Brandon Martin. He's running for Congress there in Arizona. Really great guy. In fact, I'm going out this week again to go visit. But the point is, right, we saw firsthand what is going on the border. And again, America last. That is America last policy. When I have Border Patrol agents telling me, dude, we just don't have enough manpower. We cannot physically catch all these people. We're outgunned. We don't have the help we need to do our jobs. We don't have, we don't have the resources at our disposal to catch all these people. It's a very large area with a tiny little net, and they're only going to catch so many. In fact, we caught people crossing. And we called the Border Patrol, and sure enough, they came down and they dealt with the situation, and we made sure those people were treated with respect and dignity. We made sure they had water, but those people would have just got right by if we wouldn't have called them. How many instances like that happen every single day? Again, America last.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of showing all the different policies that have been put in place to hurt Americans. I wish we could give an example of something that has been put in place to help Americans, but I can't think of a single policy that has helped.
We do have the Bruin ruling with the Supreme Court. Now,
this is true.
That did give us a little bit of leeway to sort of send some of these really terrible gun bills and edicts, if you will, back to the lower courts for a proper look. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, but what else do we get though? We get, 30 cents off of a, July 4th barbecue, and we get like 10 cents off at gas, and we get, all of these like just random things. I don't know who's coming up with this stuff at the White House. They're like, because they like to look at things as a whole, like, oh, we're going to save $3 billion. Well, how do we do that? We give everybody 10 cents off on their, turkey for Thanksgiving. And then you come up with this magical $3 billion savings, and then they'll spout that off at their daily briefings. But then you get down to the individual level, and it's just stupid.
It's peanuts.
Yeah.
You can find that in the couch,
Yeah,
right? That's
absolutely.
not helpful if you can find it in the couch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
It just doesn't make any sense
People
at all.
need some serious help. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there are not some greater, social issues at play in our country that need to be addressed, right? I mean, there's all these kids that are, getting off their meds and doing all this weird random stuff. And that's been happening since the 90s, right? When all the big pharma, I mean, we could totally get into that. But when big pharma, decide to start pumping all these kids full of all this ADHD and all this
Ritalin
random behavioral meds
like
and
that.
Ritalin and all this random stuff, right? Kids started doing stupid stuff, and they've continued to do stupid stuff. And especially with this generation that, let's just say since the 90s, I mean, we've had a whole nother generation of kids come about that are being raised by these kids that were raised in the 90s. So now you've got second generation weirdos that, they're so depressed. And look, I'm trying to sympathize with them. Like, these young adults, they hate their lives so much in some cases, they don't even care what happens to themselves. If someone just comes up with a solution and walks up to, and they don't care what they have to give up for that solution, as long as it's a solution that they don't have to work hard for or to feel a certain way about or to put any extreme thought into, they're completely willing to give up any freedom necessary just to have a comforting or at least a perception of comfort in the decision that the government's making. And that's the problem, is we're not raising our kids to distrust the government anymore, and we need to be. I mean, look, their track record is not exactly peachy, okay? They haven't been known for exactly doing the right thing. I mean, look at Waco, Ruby Ridge, the Trail of Tears, Black Wall Street. I mean, the list could go on and on and on and on. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about all the instances I could give as to why you should probably approach the way you treat these people with a grain of salt and what they say with a grain of salt. And that's the issue. All these behavioral meds, big pharma, of course, without even going and talking about the coof. I mean, look at what big pharma has had the power to do over your life just in the interest of chasing a buck.
Well, just look at how many members of Congress made money on that. That's enough said. If you look at any of these, issues with the coof or anything like that, all you have to do is follow the money. How many of those members of Congress benefited from that? And the longer that it goes on, the more money they made. So when it's almost like
they have a financial interest in keeping this going.
And then you have Fauci getting, $500,000 a year in severance, in retirement. I mean, that's absolutely insane.
And then the problem is that social media completely shuts you down if you say anything about it. My entire Facebook account was deleted. In fact, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but there might actually be some litigation on the way. I'm not going to get in any more detail, but we probably are going to be suing Facebook over this.
He says, I don't want to go into details.
Right.
We might be suing
but look,
Facebook.
it's horse crap.
It is.
Right? The kind of things that they will just ban you for arbitrarily with no rhyme or reason or reality to surround it other than, oh, well, you just said something that really offends us and goes against our narrative. And that's terrible. Like, that's not American society. That's not something we should support in American society. We should be open-minded, and we should have the ability to go, hey, I want to question this for this reason, for this very detailed reason. I want to question this. I don't believe you. Prove it to me. Tell me why I'm wrong. Show me exactly why I'm wrong, instead of, oh, well, this person was really right on this, and it really destroys what we're trying to say about this because, man, we're making money hand over fist on this giant grift going on. Well, we need to shut this guy up because he's a fly in the ointment, and we can't have him cutting into our profits. That's what's happening, right? Big tech, big pharma, big defense industry, big government, all of this stuff is a giant, pot of crap. And it's just, you got a paddle and you're just stirring the crap, and it's just...
Well, let me tell you a story about asking questioning stuff, Eric. And this is funny because it just happened yesterday. I had to go... We were late on renewing our occupational tax, our business license. We were late by like a month or two. And we got a ticket. And I had to go to the courthouse and, pay a fine. And then for some odd reason, there was like 30 other people there for the same exact reason. All of us. There was 30 business owners sitting in a courtroom. We all had the same ticket. So it was a money grab. Great. And the bailiff comes in and says, all right, we're starting this trial. We're starting this court case. Everybody move to courtroom 3, which is right next door. So all 30 of us go into this courtroom. And then when we go into this courtroom, there's a judge sitting at her bench. And I sit down and she goes, all right, what's your name? I said, oh, it's Matt. She goes, all right, how do you plead? I said, I kind of look at the judge and I say, well, ma'am, I don't think this is the right I think I might be in the wrong place, because this is not I wasn't here for a trial. I'm here to, pay a fine and go on my way. And she says, well, this is the start of a trial. How do you plead? And everybody in the whole courtroom, all of us, we're kind of like staring at each other. We're like, what is going on? Like, when did this turn into a trial? And we're like, oh my God, like everybody's kind of starry-eyed. And then I look at the judge and I go, Your Honor, everybody here is a little confused. I mean, even your staff members, I'm looking at your staff members, they're kind of like looking at each other talking. And I think everybody's a little confused, Your Honor. And she looks at me and goes, how do you plead? And I'm like kind of taken aback. And then right when she says that, the staffers, her clerks, walk up to her and like whisper in her ear. She goes, oh, wait, these people aren't on trial? And everybody kind of looks around and she's like, oh, they're just supposed to talk to the solicitor. And we're like, yeah, we're just here to talk to the solicitor to pay our fine and go back to our businesses, where no one here is going on trial. And she's like, all right, everybody go back to courtroom 1. And dude, can you imagine the craziness that just ensued? You're there because you missed a couple of weeks on your business license, and now like you're in front of a judge asking how you plead. And I'm like, this is absolutely nuts, man. But
it is.
The fact that you're willing to question and ask, like, Your Honor, I just need a little clarification on this. what is going on? Because imagine if somebody would just be like, guilty is charged, Your Honor, like lock him up, boom, like done. Like you're done. You're sitting in a jail cell somewhere. So
it's pretty random, isn't it?
It was, dude, it was the most random thing. I went home and told Lisa about it, and I was like, honey, you're not going to believe what happened today. This is crazy.
This is, not the America that I grew up in. And that's what's scary, right? Like, I'm not 40 years old yet, and here I am saying this. Now, if I was a 90-year-old man and saying this ain't the America I grew up in, I could understand. Okay, yeah, a century, a lot of things can happen. But we're only talking a few decades. I mean, all that Matt and I have known the entire adult lives is war. I mean, we've been involved. This war has been going on for 20 years, a global war on terror and all this stuff. And you notice it's just always about perpetuating conflict, perpetuating the grift, perpetuating, the military-industrial complex and their profits and their shares. And it's just, when you start to kind of take a look back and sort of realize what's happened over the last 20 years in this country, you realize that the world you woke up in today is not the United States of America. It's something that's a very poor facsimile of what freedom is supposed to be. And I realize that now. It took me a long time to figure it out. It takes a person many years to kind of open your eyes up and see what's going on sometimes. And, was there a time when I felt a little more, different about it? Of course. I mean, everyone, when they're young, has certain views. And as you get older, your views change and your opinion develops on things as you get more information, if you're willing to pay attention, right? That's the issue. Everyone wants their bread in circuses. They want to be entertained. They don't care about seeking out the facts and trying to understand and get down to the reality, the true data of what exactly is going on, what they can truly look at and discern and say, you know what, I did my best. I did my due diligence. I did my research. I figured this out for myself. I came up with my own opinion that wasn't some spoon-fed narrative from some man on the TV, right? And that's the world we live in. And that's a dangerous world, a world that we have to navigate carefully if we're going to move forward as a country and have the same freedoms that our grandparents and great-grandparents, and even in some cases our parents had. I mean, that's not a very long time. 20, 30 years is a blip on the radar of human existence. And we have to remember that society is fragile, right? Democracy is fragile. So our democratic republic, is our constitutional republic is fragile. Governments are fragile. Systems are fragile. Supply chains are fragile. Geopolitical alliances are fragile. Your enemies, whoever you consider your enemy, maybe one day they'll be your friend. Maybe one day your friend will be your enemy. But those alliances and all of those things are fragile. So we live in a fragile world that's so interconnected, and there's so many things going on that when they want to destroy that interconnectivity and control the interconnectivity that social media and the internet and things like that have given us the ability to kind of take a look under the hood and go, wow, this is happening. Right? When they want to destroy that connectivity, what does that tell you about what their intentions are? Those intentions are not good for you. They are not something that you're going to like the outcome of, I can promise.
Well said.
So we have to keep our ear to the ground on this, Matt.
Yep.
It's been scary. I mean, what do we do? How do we move forward?
I mean, all we can do is try to, affect change at the local level. I mean, and that's really what it's coming down to, is everything's getting pushed down to the state level, which I'm a huge fan of. So, I mean, if we can get more of these freedoms and legislations pushed down to the state level, then I think we're in good shape, because we have a much better ability to change and affect the local elections than the federal, because we've seen what happens at the federal level.
Changing hearts and minds is a super important thing. And, I know that hearts and minds mantra gets passed around a lot, but you got to remember that, Matt and I with the global war on terror, we're GWAT vets. So it's like, you're always, that mantra is pushed on you so hard. Oh, we have to win hearts and minds, hearts and minds, hearts and minds. And I would have never thought that I'd have to be fighting for the hearts and minds of my very own countrymen.
That's right.
And that's a scary situation to be in. And I guess I just want to sort of, acknowledge that point in this podcast. So thank you all so much for listening. I hope you had a great experience, and we wanted to kind of lay some things out. And look, life is going to be okay. All right. Don't let all of this, get in the way of your happiness. Like, seek happiness at every turn. Like, do not let this affect you negatively or wear down on you or, bring you down. Like, you're a powerful person. You can do anything you want if you just put your mind to it, and you don't need permission from anybody to do that. All you need is a little bit of, creativity, know-how, and a little hard work, and you can get there. And I think that we will persevere as a country. We will get there, but it doesn't mean it's not scary.
Yep.
For sure. Thank you all so much. And go over to Ballistic Ink and pick yourself up a snazzy new t-shirt. That's one way you can support our podcast. Remember, we post on Fridays over on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find podcasts. We post our audio version on Fridays. And then on Saturdays, the video version shows up on the YouTube channel here on Iraq Veteran 8888. So you can find a video version of this podcast on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out as well. Go pick up a t-shirt. That's one way you can support our efforts. I'll have a link in the description box below to Ballistic Ink. We got some great t-shirt designs. Matt and Lisa are doing a great job with those. So that's one way you can support us directly if you wish to do so. And have a good one. Many more on the way, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, dangerous freedom. Have a good one.